Prime Minister Stephen Harper and the Russian president had a tense exchange this weekend. It happened in Brisbane, Australia, as the leaders of the world's most powerful countries met at the G20 summit. According to a Harper spokesperson, Vladimir Putin approached Stephen Harper and extended his hand in a handshake. Harper is quoted as saying, "I guess I'll shake your hand, but I only have one thing to say to you. You need to get out of Ukraine." Putin reportedly said, "That's impossible because we're not in there." Sun News contributor John Robson joins us now with more from Ottawa. John, I think I know what happened here. Vladimir Putin is an imposing person, not just his charisma, but physically. He's a karate black belt. He's a former KGB officer. He's sporty. I think he wanted to really physically hustle and pressure people with a handshake so that they would, in that moment, not know what to do and shake his hands and give the appearance of normalcy, to physically impose himself on other leaders. Stephen Harper didn't fall for it. He didn't go full bully and take his hand away. He said, "All right, fine, I'll shake your hand, but get out of Ukraine." I think Stephen Harper had, in that moment, the right instinct and the right reflex. What do you think?
I agree with you most of the way, although I'm going to be pedantic. It's judo, not karate for Putin. I'm not sure he's a former KGB agent. But yeah, I think that Harper knew this was coming. I think he knows Putin's personality, if I may use that term to describe it. He knows he's a bully. He knows he was going to try and create this awkward moment where you don't know what to do, so you shake hands, and Harper was ready for it. And I think he was ready with exactly the right response. I know the Australian Prime Minister said that he was going to shirt front Vladimir Putin, which sounded pretty good if you can catch Putin with a shirt on. But it's Harper that did it. That was absolutely perfect. I mean, it played well back home, which is always nice if you're in politics. But I think it's a slap heard in Moscow that he humiliated Putin and he showed the Russian elite, which is more than a little bit status conscious, that the West is not just blowing bubbles over Ukraine. We cannot do anything militarily, but we take this very seriously, and Russia is going to have years, if not decades of work to undo the harm it's done to its image as trustworthy to the extent that it had one.
Oh, for sure. I mean, this was news all around the world. I saw it on New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and papers over Europe. I mean, this caused Putin, I think it was one of the reasons why Putin left the G20 meeting in a huff early with the lame excuse, I need to catch up on my sleep. He really said that as a reason for leaving the G20. I think what he thought was going to be a showcase for him to prove how normal and acceptable he was, I think Harper set the tone. And that's something that even a small country can do. We don't have the same military and diplomatic power as larger countries, but we could set the tone, and we did it better than most. Here, I want to switch gears for a second, John, because in less than a year, our country is going to have a federal election, and polls say there is a chance that we will have another prime minister, in this case, Justin Trudeau. Let me show you his comments about Ukraine. I want to show you two of them. The first was in a more casual setting this spring when he was interviewed about it right on the eve of the invasion of Ukraine. Take a look at how he handles this tough issue. Take a look.
Pour moi, le président Yanukovych est rendu illégitime. Et c'est très inquiétant, surtout puisque la Russie a perdu au hockey. Ils vont être de mauvaise humeur. On craint l'implication russe en Ukraine.
Ha ha ha! I hope he's not in a bad mood because of hockey. He might invade Ukraine. I think that was the real Justin Trudeau there. Childish, joking with his buddies, has never read a serious briefing book in his life, was thrilled he actually remembered the name of the Ukrainian president's. I mean, I think that was real Trudeau, childish, and the kind of person that Putin would devour. What do you think? Was that a real reflection of him, or was that a gaffe?
Oh, no, well, why must I choose between the two? It was both at once. You know, Trudeau does lightweight well. It's familiar territory to him. I mean, and he accidentally put his finger on one thing, that Putin was feeling sensitive about the loss of status again. You know, when you look back at the Cold War, in 1972, the hockey showdown between Canada and the Soviets, where their carefully oiled Red Army machine with all its years of practice and the full resources of the Soviet state was undone by a bunch of out-of-shape, chain-smoking individualists. And at the same time, Boris Spassky, who'd been groomed for chess success for 2 decades, is beaten by this hamburger-munching freak, Bobby Fischer. It really hurt them. So, you know, Trudeau's more likely to find the truth accidentally than deliberately. But it is, the tone of it to treat the invasion of a sovereign nation that's been looking to the West for protection it hasn't been finding as oh ha ha ha. You know, again, this is, to me, a reflection of what one might expect more of. And I always like to remind people, Trudeau Sr., though he had a reputation for having a massively great, big, huge, enormously intellectually smart, wise, knowledgeable brain, was actually very frivolous, especially on issues of national security. In his memoirs, this was written in the early 90s, he talked about, you know, herring around the countryside during the Second World War in a German helmet, scaring people and so forth. He said, you know, people said there were submarines in the St. Lawrence. I don't know if it was true. He never bothered to check. Mm-hmm. Never, not while he was Prime Minister, not afterward. It never occurred to him to look it up and discover that, yes, Canadians died in the St. Lawrence to enemy action. To him, it was all just a great big joke. Yeah. And Trudeau Jr., at one point, he said, you can't say I'm frivolous. I was raised by a very serious man. You know, he runs to daddy when he's in trouble. But the fact of the matter is, on geopolitics, his father was alarmingly frivolous.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to show you a second chance that Trudeau had to answer the question properly. That clip I showed you from Quebec TV was a gaffe, a blunder, an embarrassment. But let me show you, months later, after he had been briefed and corrected by his boss, Gerald Butts, Justin Trudeau went on CBC's show with Evan Solomon. And look at how Evan tries to pin Trudeau down. And in your mind, imagine Vladimir Putin being there instead of Evan Solomon. How pitiful the encounter would have been. Take a look at this, John.
You're nose to nose with Mr. Putin, the Ukraine situation. What do you say if you were Prime Minister?
Oh, I'm confident that my judgment and the values that have shaped me and the values that Canadians stand for are what I'm going to be bringing onto the world stage.
But what do you say to them so people know that you're Vladimir Putin sitting in front of you? What do you say about the situation in Ukraine?
Well, what's the situation going to be 6 months from now? I'm asking you, Evan.
Well, for me, my question is, what would you say now?
Well,
people are trying to test what you would do now.
I've been standing with the Prime Minister and with the Canadian position on the fact that Putin's actions have been unacceptable. His expansionist policies are not helpful to Europe or to global stability, and he needs to step off from his aggressive moves.
Okay, so aligned on that.
But a year from now, right, we'll have to see where we are. And I think the most important thing is that Canadians understand the values and the principles that drive me, and that's what we're going to continue.
Twice he fails to answer. He actually asks Evan Solomon what Solomon would do. He briefly says the right thing, get out of Ukraine, and then he immediately says, well, in a year, who knows? John Robson, I thank God it was Stephen Harper in Brisbane this weekend and not Justin Trudeau.